Okay. Yeah. What mic are you referring to? Huh? Oh, okay. Yeah.
So FYI, Zoom is unmuted. FYI.
Zoom is unmuted. Okay. Okay. Wonderful, thank you so much. Okay, all right. We're live. Or I could turn the way out. So we're gonna start. Not this. No, you're gonna. Yep, and next time you click on this is when you're ending that meeting. That down. Okay, and then let him in and make him a call. And then. Or, meeting is not being recorded, so whenever you're ready to hear.
Thank you, Judy.
Great service.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the special meeting of December 20th, 2021 to order. We'll start with the pledge of allegiance. Please stand. Pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the secretary please call roll?
Commissioner Alderready,
Here.
Commissioner Calderon, Commissioner McLaughlin,
Here.
Commissioner Ramos,
Present.
Commissioner Wu,
Here.
Vice Chair Tom, Chair Morrissey,
Here.
Chair, for the record, we did receive a notification from Commissioner Calderon.
Thank you. Before we begin, I'd like to remind fellow commissioners to not turn your microphones on when speaking and off when not speaking. And when speaking, please place your microphone about 4 inches from you. Members of the public may attend planning commission meetings in person or virtually via Zoom. I now invite the commission secretary to describe the way the public can access and participate in this meeting.
This meeting is being live streamed via our portal, www.santana.primegov.com/public-portal, and to YouTube, www.youtube.com/City of Santa Ana videos. If you would like to provide a public comment, you may do so in the following ways. Join the meeting via Zoom, entering meeting ID number 857219170073. When the item that you would like to comment on is being discussed, select the hand icon to let us know you would like to speak. You will be called upon by the name entered. If you would like to call 669-900-9128, entering meeting ID 857219170073. When the item that you would like to comment on is being discussed, press *9 to let us know you would like to speak. You will be called upon by the last 3 digits of your phone number. After you are called upon, you must press *6 to unmute yourself. For those who are attending this meeting in person and would like to provide a public comment, please fill out a request to speak form and turn it into the secretaries. All speakers will have 3 minutes to speak. I will alert you when your time is up.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on, public comments on non-agenda items. Secretary, does anyone wish to speak?
If you are attending this meeting in person and would like to comment on this item, please fill out a request form and turn it into the secretaries. If you are participating via Zoom and would like to comment on this item, please select the hand icon and unmute yourself. If you are calling in and would like to comment on this item, please dial *9 and press *6 to unmute yourself. I will wait a few seconds. Chair, we do not have any speakers.
Mr. Chair, I would just add on that because this is a special meeting, public comments are limited to only matters that appear on tonight's agenda.
Thank you. Moving on to the consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve item A, minutes from December 13th, 2021, and item B, excused absences?
I move.
Do we have any excused? There were no absences.
We want to speak.
For this meeting. Did we have a motion?
Yeah, I move. To approve the minutes.
We have a second.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Wu and a second by Commissioner McLaughlin. Secretary, please call the roll call vote.
Commissioner Aldereti,
Yes.
Commissioner Calderon, Commissioner McLaughlin,
Aye.
Commissioner Ramos, Commissioner Wu,
Aye.
Vice Chair Fong,
Aye.
Chair Morrissey.
Aye.
Motion is approved with Commissioner Calderon absent.
Chair, for the record, I want to acknowledge for the record that Vice Chair Ryan.
Thank you.
Just as a point, when Mr. Wu said that he wanted to have, he made a motion for the minutes.
Mhm.
So it would be
Oh, yes.
Do we excuse an absence for this meeting now or next meeting? So when we approve the minutes.
For this meeting, excuse Calderon.
Yeah, I made the motion only for the approval of the December 13 minutes. I did not make a motion for the excused absence.
They were done.
So we need to do, excuse me.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the absence of Commissioner Calderon?
Yeah, motion approved.
Second.
So we have a motion from Commissioner McLaughlin and a second from Commissioner Wu. All those in favor? We have a roll call vote.
Commissioner Aldereti,
Yes.
Commissioner Calderon, Commissioner McLaughlin,
Aye.
Commissioner Ramos, Commissioner Wu,
Aye.
Vice Chair Fong,
Aye.
Chair Morrissey.
Aye.
Motion is approved with majority vote with Commissioner Calderon absent.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the consent calendar. We'll move on to the business calendar. I'll go through the public hearing protocols. I'll now review the process for public hearings so that everyone knows what to expect. The staff will provide a presentation and answer questions from the commission. The public hearing will be opened. The applicant will be given the opportunity to speak, limited to 15 minutes. Members of the public will be given the opportunity to comment, limited to 3 minutes. The applicant will be given the opportunity to respond to comments made by the public, limited to 5 minutes. The public hearing will be closed. And the discussion will return to the commission for formal action taken to approve, conditionally approve, deny, or continue review of the application. Please consider the following suggestions when organizing your comments. Please state your name and address, strictly voluntary. State whether you support, oppose, or are neutral to the proposal. Your statement should include all pertinent facts in your knowledge, avoid gossip, emotion, and repetition. A clear, concise, and non-repetitive argument is most effective. This is the time and place for the public hearing on item number 1, General Plan Amendment number 2021-01, update on housing element Please note, recommendation on this item will be forwarded to the City Council at a later date for final determination. Before we begin, do any commissioners have anything they wish to disclose with regards to this item? Commissioner Alderete,
I have nothing to disclose.
Commissioner McLaughlin,
I have nothing to disclose.
Commissioner Booth,
I don't have anything to disclose.
Commissioner Ramos,
No disclosures.
Commissioner Van, and I have nothing to disclose. And now, staff will now provide a brief presentation.
Thank you, this is Melanie McCann, and I'd like to introduce Ricardo Soto. You've seen us both before discussing the housing element, and tonight we're going to just play a little tag team in the conversation to highlight some of the key components of the project. So tonight we'll be briefly going over the basics of the housing element, touching on the community engagement that was part of the project, highlighting some of the program evaluation components, and then talking about the policy framework and some of the changes that we've discussed before, but also highlighting a new one or two. And then also closing out the project schedule and the next steps in this process. So as we mentioned before, this is one of the elements in the general plan that's required to be updated every 8 years. And it also needs to meet the existing and projected housing needs for all economic segments of the community. And it needs to be certified by state HCD, the Housing and Community Development Department. So hopefully you've got a chance to look through the elements. And it's broken down into the policy framework, which is goals, policies, and implementation, or the housing plan, as we call it. And then the other required components are broken up into appendices. Housing needs is one appendices, constraints, housing resources. Again, the program evaluation of all the different policies and particularly the actions from the last housing cycle. And then we have a new section on the assessment of fair housing, and then another section that provides an overview of the community outreach. So as we've mentioned before, there was a variety of community outreach, and we include on the top here the consolidated plan, because that's a plan that's overseen by our community development agency and required for federal community development block grant funding. But there's also survey outreach and conversation about housing needs and priorities. And as you know, through our broader general plan update, we've had a variety of environmental justice outreach, and that's one of the components as well for safe and sanitary housing that's been discussed with the community. And then importantly, we went and had roundtables with 17 or so representatives of the community, including commissioners, boards, neighborhood advocates, architects, developers, a broad array. And that's one of the items that actually HCD has asked us to share specifically with them on the variety of folks that we have engaged. And then in addition, we did a housing survey, and we're proud to say as well that we just before the holiday, we have selected the 3 folks that won a gift card, a $50 gift card, so they'll have that as an opportunity before the holiday, right before the holiday. And then we have 3 open house forums, 2 which were in person, 1 which was virtual. And then, as you know, over the last couple months, we've had planning commission study sessions to acquaint the commission with the outreach and the key issues, etc. So as we mentioned, I'll just highlight it again. These are the emerging themes that came out of our roundtable, community outreach, etc. So the upper left comment is the desire to promote additional low and very low housing that's above the reallocation that the city has been given. And another item along the way was rent control and housing insecurity. And as you know, that's been addressed to some degree, to a large degree, by city council action recently. Also, the role of open space and the quality of life in housing and neighborhood. Then the idea of strengthening the housing opportunity ordinance, which is under discussion now. And then also the point of being aware that the county median income is a fair amount higher than Santa Ana's average median income, and being mindful of how that affects some of our programs that are implemented. Then another key item continues to be homeless prevention, and then being mindful of community-driven programs, staying connected with the community, and then acknowledging that we have some issues to overcome as it relates to parking, overcrowding, and potential displacement. And then also an issue is safe housing and landlord intimidation, which hopefully has been addressed to some degree by the recent action by the City Council. And then last but not least, a number of folks acknowledge the importance of code enforcement in the bigger picture of preserving quality of life in their neighborhoods. So we've all seen this table before for Santa Ana. It's good news. We've been able to meet our RENA allocation for the last period, which is 2014 to 2021. And I'll pause to reintroduce for the past Judson Brown, our housing manager, who's in the audience today, to also help with any questions today. But through the cumulative efforts of the community and our housing division, we've done a lot of success in producing affordable housing as well as a good number of market rate housing. So just a quick visual of things. This is the three at the top are affordable projects, and the Alucia actually is one that we are happy to say provides a large number of 3-bedroom apartments, which is a need for our community. Then you see the Depot at Santiago, which is 100% affordable at different bedroom sizes and rates. And then we have the Arts Collective as well on the upper right. And then as far as market rate, we have the Heritage, which includes about 1,200 units over the Red Hill Dyer area. And then KB Homes over on Harbor Boulevard, also called the Lotus, which are small lot subdivision homes. So as well, Judson, I think, helped share this one time before. We've been able to do a lot with a variety of projects as far as helping the chronically homeless. So we have the Orchard, first project on the left, was done back in 2018. It converted a motel to supportive housing. And then we also, as we mentioned, a small portion of the Depot at Santiago also helps the homeless individuals, or has helped. And then we have Heroes Landing, 75 homeless veterans are being taken care of, if you will. And then we have 15 of those in the Arts Collection are also being served. And then we also have the last project on the right that used to be a motel that was converted and rebuilt, if you will, for 56 homeless individuals. So we have a lot of success, a lot of hard work, and moving forward, we have the 5 goals you see in front of you. The first 4 are carryover from our existing housing element. And I want to pause again to affirm that the current housing element is strong and a great foundation. So what we've actually had the opportunity to do here is just to refine and strengthen the element and bring it up to speed with current legislation. So at this point, Ricardo's going to take over and walk us through the goal number 5, affirming fair housing.
Thanks, Karen. So for the new goal,
It's meant to address AB 686, which passed in 2018, and it requires all housing elements to include a section that's called an assessment of fair housing. And the primary purpose of the assessment is to analyze barriers that restrict access and choice to housing. So based on that analysis or assessment, the housing element is then supposed to commit to addressing those contributing issues through the policies and programs that are found in the element itself. The other way that the element is supposed to address the contributing issues that's found in analysis is through identifying or selecting sites in the city for future lower income housing that do not exacerbate or make any of the conditions that are found any worse than they currently are. So as part of the assessment, it includes a number of maps, which you probably saw in the draft element. I'm going to be highlighting 3 of the maps just to share a sample of the many maps that are in there. So this map here, we saw during the study session, and what it does is it highlights the percentage of households by census tract that are considered overcrowded. The last map we shared, the percentages were kind of broken down a little bit differently, and it didn't allow for as clear an analysis. One of the comments we received was to break down the percentages a little bit differently so we can clearly see where those pockets of higher concentrations are. And that's what this map here illustrates. You can see the census tracts that have those higher percentages tend to be located in the central part of the city, and those darker areas or hotspots just directly north of the downtown, southeast of the downtown, and also southwest of the downtown. So in addition to that map, we also have a couple of others that we're going to highlight. The next is a map illustrating overpayment or housing burden for renters in Santa Ana. Santa Ana, much like Orange County and the rest of Southern California, suffers from high rental rates, property values. So that's kind of translated in this, right? So as you see the map, there's a lot of orange and red up there, but the darker red or brighter red are the pockets where you have higher percentages of folks that are renting, that are rent burden or housing burden. What that means is a household that's spending more than 30% of their income toward their housing needs. And the next map here is similar, but it looks at owner-occupied units. So same thing, the darker or brighter red census tracts have the higher percentages of rent or housing burden households. And once you start to look at, these are just a sample of the 3 of the, I think it's over 10 that are in there, but you start to see some patterns that emerge, and you see that the overburden or census tracts that have higher percentages are located in the central part of the city. And using these types of tools or spatial analysis, we then start to develop strategies to implement actions and programs in the element itself to address some of the issues that become evident. So this is goal 5, to affirmatively further fair housing. It's the new goal that was added to the proposed element that you have before you. And I'll just read it. Affirm, promote, and implement social justice and equity in the provision, type, and affordability of housing and the availability of services for all residents. So in addition to having this new goal in there, there's a host of actions and policies that specifically speak to this goal and try to actualize it. 2 of the samples that are there, one of them is communication channels. It's to continue to provide an open and receptive forum for city residents, commissions, and city staff to discuss opportunities to affirmatively further fair housing. And the second, policy 5.4, is to continue to fund services and support organizations that provide counseling, dispute resolution, and fair housing services, and make a concerted effort to disseminate resources to underrepresented residents, including non-English speakers. So those are just 2 samples of the many that are found in the draft that are supposed to actualize and make this goal number 5 a reality.
Thanks, Ricardo. The next few slides, I'll touch through some of the other policies, in this case that are new. So in response to the issue of landlord intimidation, we have some tenant protection policy regarding that, and that is to provide information and resources to residents regarding landlord and tenant laws, so that they are educated on how to protect themselves in what's within their legal allowances. And then two of the actions, one is to hold annual small apartment managers workshop to train and educate property owners, homeowners associations, and property managers on best practices, et cetera. And last but not least is to partner with legal assistance organizations to provide legal clinics for tenants and tenant rights and recourse for those that are feeling intimidated or being victims of unjust evictions. So we have some protections in place these days, but these are some actions that were drafted in response to community input. The next one touches on the issue of potential displacement. So as we have new development or as we have improvements, there's the potential for displacement of some sort. So the policy was to strengthen the city's commitment to housing stabilization. So that translates to supporting measures that address impacts related to not just private but also public development that may result in displacement from existing affordable housing. So the two actions, one of which adopt the rent stabilization ordinance has moved forward, and then also identify funding and partners with community-based organizations to support community land trust program. So that's something that we, through comment, we have added in, and our housing division is working on that particular program. The other issue that came up rather consistently was residential overcrowding. So at a policy level, we're acknowledging that we need to facilitate the development of affordable dwelling units and additions and improvements to existing homes to help provide the space to alleviate overcrowding housing conditions. And two of the actions related to that are to explore opportunities for funding to assist lower and moderate income households to construct ADUs. And then secondly, to collaborate with other local jurisdictions and the state HCD to identify the best practices to help monitor these ADUs and their affordability levels to make sure that we are getting the affordability intended, and to create incentive programs to possibly have these ADU units covenanted for longer-term affordability. The next category is to promote new affordable housing, be that low, very low. And at a policy level, it's committing to the policy of facilitating diverse types, prices, and sizes of housing, not just focusing on apartments or townhouses, but single-family, mixed-use residential, transit-oriented development, multi-generational housing, a whole gamut of diverse opportunities to serve our community and their changing needs. Two actions related to that are to provide financial assistance to support the production and or rehabilitation of, say, apartments for affordable housing for the low, very low income families. And then the other action would be, the sample action anyways, is to apply for opportunities to expand the number of housing choice vouchers. And Judson can help us speak to that if there's any additional questions. But to expand that number that we have provided by the Housing Authority, and to continue to set aside at least 75% of the vouchers for extreme low income households. And that would be a newer action. So with that, back to Ricardo.
So for the sixth planning cycle, or the planning period that this housing element is planning for, HCD at the state level assigned over 1 million units to the SCAG region. SCAG then developed a methodology to distribute those units to the member agencies. Santa Ana was allocated 3,095 units. And because of a partnership or a joint development for an affordable project, Crossroads at Washington, there was a deal that the city would then take on 42 of the RENA units from the county to co-develop that project. So that put the city's new RENA or total RENA at 3,137. And the units need to be provided or planned for by affordability category, so 606 for very low, 362 for low, 545 for moderate, and 1624 for above moderate. While we do need to plan and accommodate for those units, we also can use pipeline units or pipeline projects to count toward development credits toward meeting those numbers. So currently we have over 6,000 units in the pipeline, broken down by, as shown in the table. So 414 of those units are for very low income, 689 for low, 2 for moderate, 5,064 for above mod. In addition to using pipeline units toward credits toward meeting the RENA, we can also use ADUs that are anticipated or projected to be constructed during the planning period toward meeting those RENA numbers. So based on current trends, we anticipate there being over 500 ADUs constructed in Santa Ana during the planning period. However, if that trend doesn't continue, we kind of planned for that. So instead of including the full 500 in the projection, we took a percentage just to be on the safe side. So we're building in 360 ADU projected units into the table, broken down by the following: 90 for very low income, 155 for low, 108 for moderate, and 7 for above moderate. And in addition to that, staff conducted a survey of over 1,500 multifamily units that were recently constructed and leased, and found that about 4% of those units are actually being leased out in the moderate income category without having any kind of restriction or incentive or anything. It's just market driven. So if we apply that 4% to the above mod pipeline units, we find that about 203 would be produced in that income category. So taken together, the city would have to plan for 102 very low income and 232 moderate income, with the other categories already being met with a combination of pipeline, ADU, and moderate pipeline units. To accommodate or plan for those units, the city actually has sufficient capacity in its existing plans. So this document would not require a rezone or general plan amendment to accommodate those additional units. The draft element that you have before you also identifies what those opportunity sites are to accommodate the units. So there's a couple or 3 different sites identified in the Metro East overlay zone, totaling over 14 acres that could potentially produce over 630 units, so total 637. The other planning area where there's sufficient capacity would be the Harbor Mixed Use Transit Corridor Specific Plan. Sorry, I forgot to highlight on the map there. In orange, those are the opportunity sites. And in blue, those are the existing pipeline units that are found in the pipeline projects list. So you can see this area is also already experiencing a high amount of development. So some of the factors that developers look for seem to be present there already. So we anticipate these sites being developed in those projections. So in the Harbor Mixed Use Transit Corridor Specific Plan, in blue again are the pipeline projects, and in orange are the 3 sites that we've identified to accommodate future units in the plan. So totaling over 4 acres with an assumed density of 30 would produce 133 units along the corridor that would then be counted toward meeting the RENA. And the third plan area would be the transit zoning code overlay, SD 84. So in blue again are the existing pipeline projects, and in orange is the one site that we identified there, just over 2 acres that would produce potentially 60 units.
Thank you, Ricardo. So with that, this slide speaks to the letter from HCD that you all received a copy of. We just received that today, sometime after 4 o'clock. And so it's 14 pages, which is typical for HCD's comments this go around. And we did talk it through with our HCD staff just the other day. So we walked through the highlights of it, and I'll touch on some of it here. So one of the things that's new for this sixth cycle housing element and all the cities are challenged with is the assessing of fair housing. The guidelines from HCD actually came out rather late on this topic, so everyone's having to adjust a bit. So one of the things, the maps that you saw earlier that Ricardo went through, they're looking at trying to get some additional local data and also look at the regional patterns. So we'll be doing maps that, the maps that you saw, but we'll also be doing maps that also show those patterns within the surrounding, the adjacent cities to Santa Ana, potentially the county. So again, the technical nature. So the other thing that they touched on is some additional information for our special needs housing. So they wanted to get a little bit more clarification, like a table or an inventory of our emergency shelters that we have in Santa Ana now. So a little fine grained detail, pretty straightforward. They also would like us to clarify our homeless shelter ordinance. So the ordinance we have on books now that clarifies where the zones that you can have larger and medium-sized emergency shelters needs to be updated because state law doesn't allow it to have what's called buffers, like 500-foot buffer from schools or residential. So they want us to clarify how we'll be updating that with essentially an overlay. We have a sufficient amount of industrial land for that opportunity. So we'll be giving them a little bit more detail on our thoughts on that. And then they're just a few things here and there. They like a little bit more data and clarification on some of our programs. And then the housing opportunity sites, the areas that you just saw in yellow, the boundaries in yellow, they want us to overlay those with the analysis for the affordable, the assessment of fair housing. So we'll be looking at where they're located in context to some of those characteristics, overcrowding, concentration of ethnicity, et cetera, overpayment, and they want that to be layered information as well. So as our approach is that these are a lot of technical, small adjustments here and there, and that the intention is that that we would request that we fold those changes in and then continue on to City Council in February. So I'll just go through the schedule here on the left side. We just received our letter from HCD today, but we have been looking at the patterns of what they've been giving all the other cities. So we're already started on those adjustments. And so the idea is to move forward to council on February 1st for adoption, and then send that to the to HCD by the February 11th timeline. I want to clarify the term adoption versus certification. So the law says that you need to provide an adopted housing element by February 11th, but not certified by the state just yet. So the second column here speaks to the getting us to the certification, which is also critical. So with the new practices with HCD, once we make those adjustments, those technical adjustments, we would re-release the draft. It would be available to all of us and the public, yourselves, for 30 days. And then that would be January, February. And then after that, we would then submit it to HCD for them to check through those 14 pages and make sure we got everything right. And then with that, we would then be, once they affirm that all those adjustments are made, they would provide a certification letter to the city of Santa Ana. So that is what we're recommending tonight. And so with that, our bottom line recommendation is that you recommend City Council adoption of a resolution for the general plan amendment 2021-01, as well as the CEQA document, which be an addendum to the prior cycle's initial study and negative declaration. That we're open it up to questions. And I just want to thank our team, which is, as I mentioned before, was Ricardo Soto is going to keep part. Jerry Guevara, who's probably listening in, Jackson Brown, and some of his staff. So we just want to thank the team that's real hard on this. Open any questions?
Thank you, Melanie. Yeah, I'll bring it back to the commission, see if you have any questions for staff. Start with Commissioner Wu. Do you have any questions?
Mr. Chair, can I make a personal point just before we begin discussion? I'd like to ask the fellow commissioner on the diet if we could please all wear our masks. Just because we have them very in over the DC. For the holidays, and I believe there's a city policy as well for masking monitors. Thank you.
Commissioner Wu.
As I read the letter from ACD, I was wondering if the letter, it just came today. So they haven't had a chance to read your responses that's incorporated in the draft.
The draft that's on the website and it's been available to you is the same one that ATD is reviewing.
Okay.
So what we're been doing in anticipation is we're already working on the next revision,
Right.
but they would have reviewed what you have seen.
And when I had to respond to state things with programs that I administer, I find that sometimes the word semantics enter in is that we may have stated something, but the state person that is writing it says we need to include this, and that sometimes that's covering the basis of it. And I'm wondering, for instance, we did recommend some actions. Those actions are kind of soft, such as we will support those efforts. And some of this, because of the new state mandate, like the discussion on SB9 at the last meeting, and mandate the state to do certain things. We're also hearing that neighborhood meetings and complaints about how some of these additional lot splits and things are causing additional problems, which then undermine other sections that respect diversity, inclusion, low-income people, healthy neighborhoods, and neighborhood integrity, and all that. And it's too bad that we can't have a rich discussion about that, so that we come to a consensus as a city about it. So I'm just wondering if it's a statement is set that we are providing information in this role, and a role is seen to assist residents into accessing services or getting help. And the other area related to fair housing is that we do fund the Fair Housing Council of Orange County that I work with, and they always say, yes, we apply yearly for CDBG funds, in which we would use that to go out and test landlords and seek, remedies and all that. Beyond that, is there more that the city has? Do we have a unit that assists them with fair housing enforcement, or we don't see that as a role? And this is a question, it's not I'm advocating for something, but it seems to be in the area of these things, or in language that we propose something, but our language is not, number one, we will do this, in September 25, we will do this, and we're not being specific about it. But because we're writing a goal plan right now, we may not be able to, because we're still working some of these out, and we're trying to put together some of the new state legislation. And I'm wondering if that has something to do with it, or just these, it is a semantic thing, or, and then the last question regarding the EDU is that, does garage conversion, legal or illegal, count as a adult dwelling, no addition? or they have to be legal, they have to take out a permit to make additional room and stuff. Because I've been noticing construction in my neighborhood where people are adding things in the hallway and stuff like that.
So I'll answer the AD one really briefly, and then Judson can speak a little bit to the fair housing world. But the ADUs would be required to be permitted to be a legal structure for us to count it in our arena allocation.
So if they do it illegally, it's just not counted, and we don't know anything about it, right?
Well, and that's where the program that I think was, it was discussed actually at the prior meeting, I think, and that is to look for ways to incentivize the ones that are out there now, be it through whatever the program might be, to encourage those to be legalized and have them brought up to safe state standards. Yeah,
Commissioner,
laws,
I
I
can
think.
come up with some kind of template or standard for those, so that we just don't have everyone interpreting what they could do.
Right, so again, to answer your question, they would need to be permitted and for us to count them. And then Justin, did you want to share what fair housing backdrop? I think the question was as part of the comments, not everybody's had a chance to really dig into them, but I think the comment had to do with that we're a little bit broad, and are there some specifics that we're already doing that will further?
No, I'm not accusing you of that. They said they are saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But I was countering by saying I thought we actually had good coordination with them, because I do work with them.
Right.
So they don't have problems.
So
And
this
we're
is-
funding.
So this is just an opportunity for Justin to share a little bit more.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Commissioner Wu. That is correct, like you pointed out. We do have an existing annual contract with the Fair Housing Council of Orange County, provides a variety of services to enhance and affirmatively further fair housing. A great partnership with them, a very long-standing partnership with them. And in terms of the additional activities that HCD has pointed out that we need to undertake, we'll first be looking at that agreement to see how can we build on that partnership. Because as you asked, in response to your question, do we have a fair housing unit or anybody in our city attorney's office that's doing fair housing compliance and testing? We do not. It is much more efficient for the city to contract out with the Fair Housing Council as our partner, who thinks it does
And
many
perhaps
of
it would
those.
be more specific to say we do contract with the Fair Housing Council of Orange County. Then they can't say they're not doing anything, because we have a contract that's money behind it, and there's an enforcement factor that we can work with them to keep it. It's just a suggestion. And I want to thank Commissioner Ramos for pointing out that in the acknowledgement on the draft, my name was spelled wrong. I don't really care, but since it's a document that will be going forward, I thought I'd bring that to your attention.
Thank you very much. We'll make sure.
In acknowledgement, I think it's like the third page or something.
Thank you very much. We'll make sure that that's correct. properly.
Okay, and I figured you guys would do it later, but since you raised the issue, I thought I addressed it. Yeah, my concern was that with this delay, and is there a way of mitigating it by being a little more specific about some of these items? And I thought maybe the thought behind not being that specific is that a lot of the new legislation is still working through that in the city that has density problem, not a lot of land, and there's complication with the freeways, and if you address environmental justice, you run against other concentration of people in the area that does not have problem with environmental justice. So I'm just wondering if that's all, because there's been a lot of work being done, but I'm just wondering how is this going to be delayed?
You mentioned semantics. We'll be looking at HCD's letter and their requests, and we'll be making sure we're articulating all the good things that we already are doing, and look for opportunities to be specific and strong in those statements.
Thank you. That's all I have for this time.
Thank you, Commissioner Wu. Mr. Ramos, do you have any questions?
Yes, so I'll start with the views. One of the first ones is one of the attachments to the agenda item was included a table. I believe it was a table C2, attachment 3, clarification. I'm not sure what else. Clarification is October 21st, 2021 draft document. So table C2 for pipeline housing projects. In the footnotes, there is an asterisk that says that a total of 281 units are for extremely very low income. So I was wondering why the term extremely very low income was used when throughout the element I saw either very low income or extremely low income.
Sure, that's actually a subcategory of the very low income category, but in our town, even for some people, that income category tends to be a little bit too onerous or the price point too high. So to keep track of that, we have the subcategory for extremely very low to keep track of how many units are being delivered at that price point.
Thank you. So I understand that part, but I'm wondering if throughout the rest of the element, are we referring to that subcategory as extremely very low income or as extremely low?
No, just in that table, just so we get a sense of how many of the units in that pipeline are for that subcategory of very low.
Okay, but then throughout the element, we refer to it as extremely low income when we refer to that subcategory.
You're saying at other points in the element where that subsection is referenced? I have to see what specific paragraphs you're referring to, but my understanding is that it's very low, and then the other 3 categories, and then the extremely very low is just to kind of annotate how many of those are within that bracket.
Okay, if as you all review and go through it, we can just make sure that we're using the same terminology, just so that anybody reading the element understands that we're talking about the same thing. And I know it's a subcategory, but it just was a little bit confusing.
We'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And then reading the HCD findings letter, what can you stop providing that was received right before this meeting? I appreciate that we're able to see it. I know that there were a lot of comments regarding the affirmatively furthering fair housing section. And I'm wondering if, I'm sure you all have to meet and figure out where your approach will be to addressing some of these comments. But I'm wondering if the city, or to the extent that you can answer today, is there a plan to include data on any fair housing complaints that were investigated during this housing market?
Judson division actually deals with that a bit.
Yes, there is, and in fact, we requested that information from the Fair Housing Council for this planning period recently, right? And he provided it to us. And so I think we would look for to break it down for Santa Ana specifically.
We've actually had challenges getting that data. I think. Go ahead, Ricardo, do you have some more information?
Yeah, just to add, it will be something that's included, and I think in one of the bullet points where it says clarification on programs and data. That is one of the items we're going to be adding. And in addition to the letter, we actually had conversations with HCD before receiving the letter. So some of the items that are on there, we had already started working on, hence Judson mentioned the request that we put in to get some of the additional data to supplement the document.
Great, thank you. And then on a similar note, in the other local data and knowledge and the other relevant factors section, I'm wondering if the city is planning on engaging with other service providers, such as the Public Law Center and the Leeway Society of Orange County. While they're not the official fair housing provider, I know they also do provide similar services, oftentimes more legal to Santa Ana residents.
We do, but as you know, we have partnerships with both, and in fact, with the Public Law Center, we provided them with CDBG public service funding for 2 different programs that they operate, as we see opportunity or need for their input into the housing element, we'll definitely reach out to their teams as well.
Okay, thank you. And I just thought of them because I do think that they have a lot of knowledge based off what they've seen firsthand when they're providing their legal assistance, that I think might be helpful to fulfilling or meeting all of HCD's requested, well, addressing all of their comments in a way that's meaningful and intentional. And those are, well, actually, I'll ask one more question. So I know HCD also commented on the need to include additional data and analysis for persons that are at risk of being displaced. And I was just wondering what the city's approach to addressing that comment might be. And I know you still have to, you can maybe discuss this further.
We'll need to give that some more thought to see how we can approach that, and we'll look at, HCD's guidance, best practices of how other cities are approaching it, and fill that gap.
Okay, thank you. And those are all of my comments and questions for now.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you for the safety reminder also. And, we'll go to Commissioner McLaughlin. Do you have any comments or questions?
Two questions. When you talk about adding service, what specifically are we talking about when adding services to, some of the categories of housing that we're talking about here? And are those services things that are today available within the city, or are they services that are related to the county also?
The type of services that you are speaking to are like legal aid services.
There's a whole series of services that are in here. And categorically, they would break out. I understand it's a housing element, but we're talking about landlord, tenant, training, interaction, services, legal services related to landlord and tenant. We're also then talking about getting into categories of very low income housing. We're talking about offering additional services there for the homeless. We're talking about additional services there. So I'm just trying to put my arms around it and say, what are we talking about with regards to these additional services, and what are the costs going to be related to that, and who bears the responsibility for those costs? Is it going to be the city of Santa Ana, or is it going to be Orange County? It's not clear.
I'll start with that, and Justin, feel free to jump in if you have some information. But I would say that some of the services, for instance, having the annual educational summit to educate property owners on good practices for property maintenance and for educating them on their residents' rights. I know our neighborhood improvement organization does those type of educational outreach currently. So I would think we would be looking for the opportunity just to pull them to add that to the agenda, if you will. So we do have some of those sorts of services, if you will, or educational gatherings already in place, and we would just continue to tailor them to be focused for that's most important.
And I would add to that much of the language that you see in our housing element is incremental. That we try and first build off of the existing services that we provide, describe them really, really well, and then we're quite deliberate when we say, okay, add this additional service. And so we're I can't pinpoint exact examples for you, but I
get that.
You get the idea.
What I'm trying to look at is who's the source of providing that service, and how is it going to be accounted for within the city. So if you tell me it's something that has to do with the county, okay, and the county's not going to charge anything and not put any costs associated, it's understandable. We're just trying to understand with these different categories that we're talking about and the term services that are being rendered, what does that mean? How does that play out from a cost standpoint? Because every bit of this, in some respect, is the cost.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner McLaughlin. For our housing division's budget, for example, our budget is over $40 million a year. We provide a variety and array of different services, affordable housing services across that $40 million budget. So in terms of additional services within that we're proposing in the housing element, most any of the areas where we have added an additional service are is incremental, small increase building upon what we're already providing. Melanie?
So I think I hear Judson echoing what I was trying to share is that that the services, like the one that neighborhood improvement and code enforcement would do annually, as part of the PrEP program or part of the outreach with apartment owners, that we would be just adding to that and incrementally adjusting it. So we don't see, at least for the housing element, a lot of additional resources. We see that as just furthering what we have now and adjusting it.
And I'll caveat, if I may caveat that too, this letter from HCD in terms of our actions in response to this letter may lead to us increasing some form of services, you know, using our existing budget, using the existing resources. Right? Yes.
If I may add to your question, Mark, to be specific, if I was writing a response to that, I would lead off with the first sentence that said we provide over $40 million services, working with neighborhood works Orange County to do implements and mortgage assistance program. We have these low-income housing programs with Housing Authority. We have these programs with Fair Housing Council. I think the lack of specificity in Melanie Coyle, thinking that we're not doing it, but we've been working with the city for I don't know how many years we've been doing this stuff. We know we have done a lot of things and we'd like to do more and we find additional resources. But you talk to someone up in Sacramento. In my case, I was talking to someone who was in Washington, D.C. And so I found that it was a lot better to not over explain, but to provide the information that we know so well. And then, you know, question that. Because we do a lot. So maybe that's, and I think our comment kind of point to that, and your response show that we are doing something, but someone has the impression that we're not doing it. And that's why I use the word semantic, that we find better words.
Just to point out, I was just searching through our documents for the services, and it's in there all over. I would offer that 95% of those services actually were in a prior element. But I think as Justin mentioned, as we look at the affirmative housing part, if there is a need to strengthen some of our services, we will have to assess that.
The other question, and this is one that just it kind of is concerning, in that we talk about, we have one bullet in here about parking. Yet it appears that everything we continue to do is making the parking issue worse, not better. You know, I think Commissioner Wu mentioned, you know, with regards to ADU, does an ADU include a garage? And the answer is yes, it does. So, you know, we have somebody that converts a garage into an ADU, it's legal. There goes 2 parking spaces by virtue of the way it's set up in the beginning. Now I mean, there's a perfect example. I drove by the new affordable housing over on First Street, seniors affordable housing. And you go, and if you were to go there 6 months ago, next to it is the old Revere house, and the parking lot was empty. Now people are renting that building, that parking lot is full. And, you know, it doesn't even, It's not even in San Ana, if I'm not mistaken, that particular thing is in Tustin. That land is in Tustin. So, you know, and then you look at some of these other houses, one of the developers, I won't name the person, but somebody told me that one of the developers came up and said they were having a hard time renting out their apartments because they didn't have enough parking. But in both cases, if I'm not mistaken, one that's down the street and the one that's 55 and seniors, that particular situation, they got bonuses. They had bonus element for additional, for less parking and additional units. When are we gonna stop doing this? It's self-abuse. I mean, I don't understand why we continue to make this an issue, but we don't make it better, we make it worse in the things that we're doing. And I understand the state dictates a lot of this, but we've got to do something different. It's not working.
And Commissioner, I acknowledge and know your frustration. I think we share the same frustration. As you mentioned, the state really does dictate and it continues to draw on parking as a source of reducing the cost of affordable housing and making parking less and less a requirement, more and more as an incentive for helping to provide affordable housing. Doesn't mean it's not a problem. I think locally we see that it's a problem, and as frustrated as we are with those types of mandates, we'll continue to work with our community to evaluate how we can better address apartment supply and the demand of parking through looking at development that is better suited for transit, multimodal, encouraging bicycling, encouraging pedestrian, reducing the trips. So that is what we do on our end, but we do recognize and we agree that the state continues requirements to drawing on parking as a resource reduction for affordable housing does have an impact locally that is not being addressed.
You look at OCTA and ridership is down. And this whole premise of what we're trying to do with this housing element says that ridership should be through the roof on some of these lines. It's not. I mean, how do we remedy some of these situations? It just doesn't make sense. I mean, the other one is open space and green space. Everybody's talking about wanting to have open space, green space. And they say, well, okay, but you can put 2 ADUs on our one property that's been subdivided into 2 units. And next thing you know, you just lost open space and green space. But it's helped overcrowding, which I find is hard to believe because you have 10 people on 2,400 square feet, and you make it into 4 different little buildings. It's still 10 people on 2,400 square feet. I mean, they're still doing the same activities every day that are going to drain the resources of water, electricity, heat. Go down the list. It's still for 10 people, whether they're sitting in 2 different buildings or not. It doesn't make sense. We're not addressing the problem that we have is overcrowded and conditions that are not good to be living in.
I think we have the economic war and class warfare that places people at the bottom.
Get your microphone on.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
That places people economically at the bottom at a disadvantage because you need that additional roommate service, additional income in order just to meet the variable income. That's something, again, time and time again, we can't address, but we come against the affordability factor. And this is a city that has a lot to address and provide housing for the homeless, and those are the very low income and all that, and I really support that. But by the same token, we're having to subsidize it, either us or the tenants, because we're not given the jobs that pay for it. There are groups of people who be programming another high wage job, they don't have this problem because their sole income can provide them with a good living and exit living. we have working people. And more if we do try, and I don't think Mark is complaining about it or saying that we shouldn't do it. Well, we're just saying that it's frustrating trying to do something and yet at the same time not having the real resources to address the economic disparity, which is something beyond the scope of what the planning commission, but time and time again, were put up against that. And then politicians, like the Second Amendment, decided we're going to throw a lot of money at it. Well, once you throw the money at it, how has that changed the lives of the people that you help? I'm saying that from having 50 years of anti-poverty program, financial stability programs that I have administered, I'm up for lifting people up economically. And we know that there's financial stability, it takes a lot of resources over time, but people can get self-sufficient. But if we just, throw money out there for temporary solution, we're not going to get at the heart of it. And it's not being addressed by the general plan, it's not being addressed by the housing plan goes out of our scope. We do mention that because we understand that in research. So I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, but I think that's part of the frustration, Mark, is to look at that economic disparity.
Which is an interesting comment, because if you look at the presentation, we have the AMI index, which is the city versus the county when it comes to income. Where do we stand with respect to that? Are we in the top 10, middle 10, low 50s?
I apologize, Commissioner, I don't have that data off the top of my head.
Why would we put in the presentation if we don't know what to do and how to answer the question?
Santa Ana is lower than the county, but I think Justin was saying on 1 to 10 or the criteria you're asking for, we wouldn't know if it's number 2, number 3, or.
We could look that up while we're here and just on the website.
At what point, what are the measures that you have that are indicators that show you're either getting better or you're getting worse or you're not getting any? I mean, I look at that AMI indicator and say that's an interesting one, because as Commissioner Wu said, we're trying to lift the economics for those that live in Santa Ana, and do things to improve and raise the economic level for the individuals here.
Commissioner Hoffman, I can respond to that question. In terms of looking at ensuring that the issues of income and housing and affordable housing is addressed fairly, the state through the Southern California Associated Government passed the process. And this time around, what we did was look at how to better provide for fair share distribution of those affordable housing units to each city. For us, we received a number that is reflective of the need of the city in a way that's compared to the region. We actually received a credit in terms of allocation, because SCAG saw that for the city of Santa Ana, we have done a significant amount of effort towards providing affordable housing. Our community has certain what's called disadvantages that they have looked at. So when you look at the region as a whole throughout Orange County, different cities in Orange County have a higher number of allocation. That is an effort by SCAG to look at how they can fairly distribute the needs for affordable housing so that it's not focused and concentrated in one place. In fact, if you recall, 4 cities even tried to appeal the numbers and ask SCAG to add additional requirements for our city. So we were successful in defending that and working with SCAG. So that's, when you look at it, that's how SCAG is reviewed on helping to redistribute the focus of fair housing and economic fair share, so that is not all focused in San Diego.
Fully get it. What does AMI do?
Well, the AMI just really shows what is the average income of
In
the
the
family
county versus.
living in
city
San
center.
versus the county, correct. So it's really looking at, it's really looking at more of what is the actual income of a family in Santa Ana, and not necessarily looking at distributing that income to Santa Ana. So it's recognizing the current status of the income level of
Right.
residents in our community.
Right.
That number is not meant to say that it is trying to attract or allocate more of that income level to Santa, if that's what you're asking.
I'm asking, where are we with regards to that indicator? And, how do we use that as a method of
I think the data shows that as income rises in Orange County, our residents' income doesn't rise as fast. So we continue to income level or housing costs always tend to outpace the income level of our residents. That's what the data shows.
But our housing costs, on average, with respect to the county, are lower than the median.
It's lower, but it's still outpacing the revenue and income of our residents.
Okay.
And I acknowledge your point that, idea that the general plan has a number of metrics that we're measuring our progress, and it's would be one that we would want to track over time. So hopefully as our education level is going, our work programs are doing better, et cetera, our average median income is also lower. So it's all intertwined there. So we'll look for where that might be measured as a matrix. We have, actually, in the bigger general plan, we talk about identifying matrix, and this could be one that is on there.
Is Commissioner Alderete with us?
Yes, I just had a couple of questions. So on page 4 of the staff report, there's a sentence that I just wanted clarification on. It says, in total, the identified sites can accommodate 838 units, providing a substantial buffer to address the SB 166 no net loss requirements. So I guess the part I'm confused about is the SB 66 and how that plays with the 838 units.
So the question was about how the identified opportunity sites interplay with the assessment of fair housing, is that correct?
That's correct.
So for the identified sites, we're supposed to try to identify opportunities within the city that are in higher resource areas, and higher resource is derived from the assessment. So all the different layers or the different things that are analyzed get compiled into a map that's a high resource area map. And you're not supposed to locate any new housing in areas that are lower opportunity.
Oh, okay. Oops, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. The other question I had, I think this is for Melanie, is the comment letter from HCD typically how this certification works? Just because the letter, and I reviewed it very quickly, seems mostly to have ticky-tacky comments, sort of, or follow-up comments that are outside of the AFFH context. But is that like the correct read that I have?
I would offer, particularly with the dialogue that we had with HCD, that a lot of the comments are refinements, small refinements. We call it, but they are adjustments, refinements, semantics, saying it so clear, but saying the same thing, but slightly different. But there is definitely a part that has to do with the affordable housing, that affirming fair housing, that again, they want additional data and to just give us a little bit more strength, a little more analysis. At the end of the day, will the policies and programs be different? Probably not, but there might be some that that come up from a geographic standpoint that say that the particular program, a little bit like, I think like environmental justice areas. If it clarifies that there's certain geographic areas, then some of our programs might need to be focused in those particular areas. Same programs that focus a little bit more on those geographic areas.
Got it. Okay, yep, that's it for my questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Alderete. Vice Chair, and do you have any questions?
In regards to the letter, can I have some clarification on when it says that 6 cycles due October 15th this year? What does that mean in terms of our own timeline?
Certainly. So October 15th is ideally when all of the Skag region adopted their housing elements, but the law gives you a grace period. So most of us are working within the grace period, and that's what takes us to the February 11th date.
The February 11th date is our own milestones to get this moving along, or is it mandated somehow?
That's the legislative part. So the grace period takes you to February 11th. And so that's what we are working to make within that time frame.
And then before I comment on the map that was shown on the slide, is it, are surrounding cities data accurate in terms of, I know that within the dash line, we identify different maps for the payment, homeowners, rent, the surrounding cities, is that very accurate? That data is very accurate as well?
Yes.
Because for me, you know, put Tenant in context to its neighbors, we're not relatively unique in terms of our own needs. And it looks like, you know, surrounding cities have, very large portions of their areas, for example, paid by renters, things like that. So my comment is that in the context of the county, we have very similar situations to our neighbors. So how are our neighbors dealing with the shortage? You know, I'm assuming they're having a shortage in the very low income and moderate income as well. Just the same things that we're struggling with. How are they sharing? How are they dealing with these issues as well?
Justin, do you have a sense of talking about housing managers?
Yeah, sure. Let's see here. City of Anaheim and City of Irvine or the City of Garden Grove are entitlement jurisdictions, so they receive federal funding from HUD on an annual basis to address the affordable housing needs in their community. The smaller jurisdictions in Orange County, many of them receive allocations. Well, I'm sorry, many of their affordable housing developments are sponsored and are supported through funding through the County of Orange. And they rely on funding from the County of Orange, from the Orange County Housing Finance Trust, as two sources of funding. And, you know, they move forward, they are able to advance forward affordable housing projects in their community by piecing together various sources of affordable housing. I'm sorry, various sources of affordable housing funds. And whereas our larger jurisdictions, again, entitlement jurisdictions, receive funding directly from HUD on an annual basis, those other jurisdictions have to piece together their funding sources with a lot of reliance on the county and on their own resources and land as well. But it's each city kind of presents different challenges to provide affordable housing for the residents.
Do you know if they suffer from the same circumstances we do, where there is a lot of moderate, in terms of above moderate and then above moderate housing, and then very lacking in very low income? Are they in the similar boat as we are, or better or worse in terms of producing very low income?
Great question. Yes.
We could follow up and provide you with the annual progress report for the least Orange County jurisdictions, but I would offer generally, the low and very low Judson are one of the more challenging categories to meet. And so I would have to, I would imagine this, the statistics are just going to affirm that they're also having challenges with that.
Just to add to that, for the last RENA planning period, I believe it was only Santa Ana and Laguna Niguel in the Orange County area that met its RENA. So just by that alone, it shows that some of the other jurisdictions are struggling a bit with meeting their numbers. And Santa Ana, for the last planning period at least, exceeded all the numbers, right?
Then I have another question in terms of the unit numbers. I know that it's categorized as units per housing units. How fine tuned is the unit numbers in terms of the units can be defined as 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedrooms? If we're asked to allocate X amount of very low income units, but it's all 1 bedroom units, how is it tailored to our residents who, one could say, if they're in a very low income situation, it might be a family of 4, and if those numbers are tailored to specific situations, or as long as we meet a unit number, we're okay.
So the reallocation does not factor in bedrooms, right? But having said that, with our inclusionary housing program, for instance, with the our inclusionary funds, if affordable units are provided in a project, we require them to be the same size as, say, the rest of the market rate ones. So there's equity there. And we also have policies and acknowledge that our population has a need for more bedrooms. And so housing, when they're working on affordable projects, which that's can see too, they actually work with the developers, the affordable developers, to get a good balance of larger bedrooms. But in and of itself, HCD or the state doesn't differentiate between a 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom at this time.
Thank you for your comments. I do have one question regarding the EIR. I believe the draft EIR we approved with the general plan was dated August 2020. And I noticed this EIR reference is a EIR 2014.
So the approach on the housing element was to keep it separate from the larger general plan, not assuming that one was going to get to the finish line one way or the other, time-wise. So this addendum is the addendum to the negative declaration that was prepared in 2014. So it is pulling from a negative declaration, and that's why it's referenced in 2014. Our last cycle was 2014, 2021. That's the negative declaration, goes back to 2014.
Should have referenced the latest EIR?
The latest is not adopted, and we're not sure, there's an unknown there, so that's where there was a purposeful direction to, while it would be ideal to use the latest environmental, et cetera, we kept them separate so that one would not hold up the other one, so we could move forward to try and achieve the February 11th submittal to HCD.
So did the EIR, I haven't reviewed 2014 EIR, did that have the same housing numbers that we're talking about? Currently?
No, so let me clarify, it was actually a negative declaration, so it was one step down from the environmental impact report, but it referenced the numbers that would have been required back in 2014. So that's when we had 204 was our number, but the environmental analysis and the programs, if you will, were very much the same, right? Because we've talked through the new policies and the new actions. So the foundation of the neg deck in 2014 is is still a strong enough foundation to pull from, to draw from, to do an addendum. And that's through our place sources and our consultants to prepare that secret document.
Was that forthcoming or is?
It's actually in the report, it's a link. So if you go to the link that's in that particular exhibit, it's on the website and it's listed as an addendum to the negative declaration. It's about it's this document here. It's essentially 47 pages. And it basically with an addendum, it goes through all the different items and affirms why the different environmental impacts are and the programs proposed in this new draft wouldn't initiate any additional significant impacts or physical changes.
I don't have any further questions, so we'll bring it.
Sure, I have a few additional questions.
Okay. Let's go ahead.
Thank you. I have a few questions for staff on their goals and the programs that pertain to the goals. So I have a question on program number 7 of goal 1. It's on page 181 of the file, the electronic file. And it's a Tenant and Building Healthy Communities. So in the status, the appropriateness section states that the endowment period lapse in 2020 for the modified program building well, there's a typo there on a CPHC. But I was just wondering if the initiative was contacted to form this modified program.
We did actually reach out to the current director for building healthy communities, and as you might know, they're in transition, and they're kind of reaffirming, re-identifying what their mission is. So we did reach out to them and have a conversation.
Great, thank you. And then I also have a question on goal number 4, program 47, rapid rehousing. So I'm not on that page, I'm getting there. But I'm wondering if, in light of recent happenings where there are nonprofit organizations and perhaps businesses that have been dealing with homeless encampments on their property, I was wondering if the city is considering or might consider an objective to work directly with those organizations and businesses that might be dealing with these issues in an attempt to provide a rapid rehousing services to the homeless individuals that may be on the properties. And I'm going to the page now to try to see what the current objective language is.
And I think I heard you, what program did you mention?
Program number 47, rapid rehousing. So the current objective reads, continue to provide funding and technical assistance to support the provision of prevention, outreach, and supportive services, aligned with the 10-year plan to end homelessness. And under the accomplishments, one of the more recent accomplishments is that 7 different organizations were provided with ESG funding, which I think is great. But my concern is, or what I'm thinking is, how can other organizations that might not receive direct ESG funding or businesses work with the city in an attempt to provide rapid rehousing services to homeless individuals that may be occupying their properties?
If Judson could speak.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Ramos. So what I hear you saying, not to reiterate it, is asking if we can include an objective to better facilitate that relationship with our businesses, with an ESG funded service provider providing rapid rehousing.
Yes.
Yes, and that's something we could talk with our homeless services division about better creating that relationship between our businesses and our ESG funded rapid rehousing service providers.
Great, thank you. And then also, I was just wondering, I didn't see any language, any specific language on this, but is the access to rapid rehousing a low barrier access, or, and if not, would the city be open to including language to help make those processes have less barriers for individuals that are in the housing?
Yes, thank you. It is the lowest barrier. It follows the housing first model.
Okay, great, thank you. And then also under goal number 4, program number 3, childcare options. So there are currently 2 objectives. One is regarding the review of zoning code, and the other is regarding funding organizations to help address the needs of supportive service needs of Santa's children.
Excuse me for a moment,
Yes.
Commissioner. I just wanted to clarify. I think you might be reading from the program evaluation.
Okay, sorry, I think I am.
Okay, no worries. If you wanted to switch to the newer programs, the child care part is on page 47. Sorry for the interruption.
No, sorry, is that in the same document or am I reading?
Yes, it'd be in the same document, page 47, and then child care options is number 50. In the beginning before the pages are numbered by appendices at the bottom, A, B, C, and so that the whole number should reflect.
Okay, well, in an effort to save time, so I will scroll there. I'll just add that I wanted to see if the existing objectives, could be, so one of them could be amended, or if the city would consider adding an additional objective to explore partnerships with worker cooperatives that are forming in the city to provide childcare. Because I know that they may not be considered a childcare organization in the same way that others are, but I know that is happening. And that is all. Thank you.
It seems like a reasonable adjustment to that too, for the opportunities to partner with childcare cooperatives, you're saying,
Yeah,
or
that is
that,
fine.
I know there's groups out there that are training
Exactly.
folks to do home childcare, it's realized license kind of things.
Yeah, and just to provide context, because I believe state laws have changed to make in-home childcare services easier. There are residents in China that are training themselves to be able to provide those services, and they will be licensed. So I just want to ensure that the city is thinking of those efforts, and they'll be picking up during this upcoming housing period.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you. And those are all my comments, Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Already.
Yeah, I should have said this at the beginning of the meeting. I have to leave to go to the airport at 7:15, so I'll be signing off at that time.
Okay, thank you. Safe travels.
Thank you.
Okay. Madam Secretary, have we received, not hearing any other comments from commissioners? Questions?
Yes,
Or issues, written communication?
yes, we received 2 written comments.
And I would like to now open the public hearing. We'll now take comments from the public. Secretary, do we have any members of the public who would like to comment?
If you are attending this meeting in person and would like to comment on this item, please fill out a request form to speak and turn it into the secretaries. If you are participating via Zoom and would like to comment on this item, please select the hand icon and unmute yourself. If you are calling in and would like to comment on this item, please dial *9 and press *6 to unmute yourself. I will wait a few seconds.
The next person who can speak, their phone number ends in the digit 562. You may unmute yourself to speak.
Madam Secretary, while we're waiting for that, do we have any speakers who are here tonight that sign up to speak? Maybe we can have those speakers speak first.
Yes.
We have no speakers online.
They have them on.
We haven't unmuted themselves, so we can go ahead and take the.
Okay. We will now take in-person speakers. We have two requests to speak, and one from Mr. John Hanna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and commissioners and staff. First of all, I want to commend the staff on a wonderful report and many parts of it to like. But I'm here to talk about two, I think, shortcomings that I would appreciate the commission to address. First of all is the inadequate number of workforce housing that you see here. If you look at table C2, pipeline housing projects, out of 6,169 projects, only 2 are in the moderate affordable. Workforce housing is about 80 to 120 AMI. And we're losing many of the union construction workforce who are Santa Ana residents. They're going to the Inland Empire because they don't have that niche. They're not quite there for the pure market, but workforce housing, Irvine's doing this. They're focusing on University of California and Irvine employees, the hospital employees, and also construction worker employees. Workforce housing is going to be a major component. And since all areas are supposed to be covered, as this EIR presentation talked about, this is the shortcoming I think can be handled and I think done very well by the city. The second and last problem is really the failure to address more environmental issues on the air quality. Many of the findings are under the 5.25 impact about emissions exceeding the local significant thresholds and air pollutants. Those environmental findings, construction activities associated with future development that would be accommodated under the general plan update to generate short-term emissions in exceedance of the short South Coast Air Quality Management District threshold criteria. And the city's done in the plan has talked about some of the mitigation. But one of the comments that is made is that no other mitigation really could make a significant dent. And I would say that, and you've heard this before from me, a skilled and trained workforce with a local hire component can make a big difference with regard to the air quality. That's not although that's my opinion, that was a finding by the South Coast Air Quality Management District who's noted here. So what's stopping us from incorporating? The general plan should do things like this. Add a component like Riverside just did, City of Riverside. And there's a sale of a city-owned property. After the Surplus Act those requirements are taken care of. And it's sold to somebody who's going to be whatever the construction that they have. But here we're talking about housing. There should be a requirement that that workforce will be skilled and trained and with a local hire component. Now, Riverside has said 20 miles from the city center is the appropriate local hire under their definition. Santa Ana may have another one, but we shouldn't just look appropriately just within the city limits, because I've heard that before. Somebody who looking at that map there, somebody who lives in Tustin, in West Tustin, is going to be closer to that Dyer and Warner project than the city people in the west side. All right, I have so much more, but there's a skilled and trained workforce requirement with a local hire component would really make an impact. And that's all you have to do. That is appropriate and it could be included in. Thanks.
Next we have Mr. Dale Belvin.
Good evening, commissioners and staff. I'd like to thank Melanie and Ricardo for clarifying something on the review process. However, I think that the fact that you guys are going to vote on a document, it's still being drafted, still being changed, is fundamentally wrong. you ought to be able to see something that's going to be presented to the planning commission or to the city council in its completed format, not just a moving document. So I hope that you guys get to see it before you vote on it. Table Alpha 1 has a population of 360,100. Other general plan documents have it as high as 431,000. I don't know why we have this $70,000 variance in population. And in fact, Orange County Register, they'll use population of 330 up to 575 from doing COVID data. Why can't the city get control over what the population is of Santa Ana? The average apartment rent for Santa Ana was $1,497 in 2013, and it says it's a 31% increase over the 8 years. It's really only an average of a 4% increase over the 8 years, which is in line with what the rent stabilization is. In fact, the rent stabilization, if it had been in effect, it would only have been $100 difference in rent. So I think we present things the way that we want people to see it versus the actual data that's there. Urban neighborhood on table Bravo 1, it says the max unit density for urban neighborhood is only 30 dwelling units per acre. It's really 50 dwelling units per acre if you look at the land use element. It needs to be fixed. Senate Bill 9 isn't really addressed adequately in the housing element, I don't think, because it says one parking space per unit is allowed under state law for an ADU. But Senate Bill 9 doesn't require parking for ADUs or for any of the other Senate Bill 9 construction that's coming up. The one that was really glaring to me was table C2, pipeline housing projects. It looks like between the pipeline housing projects and the proposed projects, we already will meet the 2029 RENA numbers. So we should be looking at a lot more projects in the future. We are going to short ourselves in 2030 if we keep on exceeding numbers by 200, 300, 400, 1,500%, as in the last reported period. We got to stop doing that. I'd like to know if the AMI is really county or city that's being used. It's not identified. We just keep on saying AMI, AMI. What is it? Is it the city or the county numbers that we're using? It makes a big difference.
Mr. Chair, excuse my interjection. You may have intended to do this, but the record should reflect that the public hearing was indeed open before our public meeting was on this matter.
I said that.
Okay, then, thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify.
The next person who can speak, their phone number ending in 562, you may unmute yourself. And you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. I apologize in advance. I'm calling in by phone and the audio is not too great. But I just wanted to add a few comments. My name is Luis Sarmiento from Thrive Santana. And I wanted to call in also to show some appreciation for city staff and also the commissioners who are, investing a lot of time into this important document. There are a few recommendations that Thrive would like to put forward. We appreciate a lot of the changes that have already been made to the housing element, and there's a few recommendations with regard to protections for existing tenants and to make sure that development that happens, especially of affordable housing, whether it's new development or acquisition rehab projects, benefit existing residents. There's policies such as tenant opportunities to purchase, also right of first refusal. These are the types of policies that we'd like to the city to consider including, in addition to those that have already been included. Yeah, we'll be providing some of these recommendations in writing, although we've also been part of a lot of the housing element roundtable discussions and other outreach efforts that have happened in the past year and even before that. So thank you very much, everyone, and we look forward to getting these recommendations in the next in the following month in time for approval by City Council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other callers on Zoom that would like to speak? I'm gonna wait a few seconds. We have no more speakers, Chair.
Thank you. Does staff have any final remarks?
Mr. Chair, I would like to make reference to what Luis Sarmiento recommended on the right of first refusal. And we would like to read into the record adding a measure or adjusting a measure in consultation with our housing staff about supporting the creation of a right of first refusal ordinance for tenants who have a higher risk of displacement due to a range of factors. So we would like to read that as a, we have a clarification sheet and things that we're specifically adding. We would like to recommend adding a program to that effect.
Does that require a motion?
So it would be, when you take an action that you.
Is that in the current report or reading from the report, or is that additional information?
So, for instance, if you took an action to approve, it would be approve the action with an additional action related to first right of refusal to be incorporated. Or alternatively, we know we're doing a number of changes related to ATV's comments that could just be folded in at that time.
Can we also take up this issue about workforce housing too?
Could you repeat that, please?
I was wondering if we take up the adders, a little statement about workforce housing. What Mr. Hammond was talking about. Many of our residents are in the construction trade. I think you said, many are moving to but if we have something about hiring workers from locally within 20 miles of the civic center, that would go a way to improving that picture of economics of giving them the jobs. There is a shortage of construction workers.
And I think we recognize the comments point regarding labor and the ability to look at fair distribution of housing in labor balance. However, this is a housing policy document that does not address labor issues, so it would not be the place to be discussing city policies on local hire or issues.
Sure, I have questions for staff as well regarding some of the recent comments.
Sorry to interrupt, we need to go ahead and close the public hearing before we do anything else.
Yeah, I'm going to close the public hearing and we'll bring it back to the commission for additional questions, comments. So we have no more speakers.
Right.
So I will close the public hearing And we'll bring it back to the commission for questions. Staff. Mr. Ramos, do you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have a comment, maybe recommendation for staff, specifically for Melanie. I know Paul just commented on the tenant opportunity to purchase act, which has also been brought up by commissioners in the past, and I've brought it up on several occasions. And Melanie, as you quickly try to think of what language on that could possibly look like, you said that tenants that are at higher risk of displacement would have an opportunity to purchase. And I would like to recommend that the higher displacement part of that statement not be included, because I think that would limit who can benefit from such a policy, and then the city would also have to define what higher risk means, which I think could get too technical and could maybe cause more harm than do good in certain circumstances. So I'd like to just recommend that that be a general policy that applies citywide to all residential properties. And then also, I know another speaker asked what the AMI is based off, and from my understanding, it's based off county income. If staff wants to make a correction of them wrong, please do so. Let's see. And I know another speaker spoke about environmental issues, specifically about air quality concerns. And I was wondering how much of that is being addressed by the environmental justice element, and where it is, can we make references in the housing ordinance so that other readers that may have similar concerns can know where in the general plan those concerns are being addressed. And then also a question on the, I know there were comments on local hire policies and how those could mitigate some of those environmental air quality concerns. And I know that staff just provided comments on how the housing element may not be the best place to incorporate those type of policies. But I know that the housing element currently references the housing opportunity ordinance that is still being considered by the city council. And I know that aspects of the housing opportunity ordinance may reference local hire. So once that housing opportunity ordinance is adopted, and if it's adopted before the housing element is certified, I'm wondering if any local hire specific policies within the HOO that are adopted by the city council can then also be named in the housing element. And I know that's all going to depend on timing and what happens at the city council.
In terms of the policy that is done at the implementation level, certainly if that is an issue that the council would want to address uniformly throughout the various actions and implementations on the general plan, that's certainly something that the city council would then consider at that time.
Okay, so I understand that, and I know the city council will ultimately, when this goes to the city council, they'll also be able to make decisions. But my interest is that the housing element outlines these various policies as clearly as it can throughout the element, just in the same way that we're discussing Tenants Opportunity Purchase Act, and in the same way that rent control is being named.
Well, it discusses rent stabilization, identifies how the inclusionary zoning requirements, the implementation of the labor component is on the funding component of the inclusionary housing, and also the projects that is subject to inclusionary housing requirements would have a labor component. As a labor policy in the general plan, I'm not sure where it would fit in or how we should craft such a policy in terms of housing production in the city.
So given how it may be embedded in the housing opportunity ordinance, is that policy something that would be referenced in the annual progress reports that the city will have to send to HCD to monitor?
HCD doesn't address labor components, it addresses the production of affordable housing by the city in terms of number of units produced.
But those APRs report beyond just housing numbers and what's being produced, they also report on programs and policies.
It's on the, and the programs and policies in terms of housing.
Looks like Justin might have a point.
Yeah, what I'm more hearing you saying is the fact that the ordinance includes skilled and trained workforce language in there, is that to see how we might bring over that effort to the housing element. So maybe something like incentivize the use of skilled and trained workforce through the city's inclusionary ordinance as maybe a new objective or something like that, right? To match the language that's happening in the housing opportunity ordinance. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so my interest is that the housing element reflects whatever happens with the HOO and whether or not that includes any labor or local hire components, because I also see the relationship between those components and ensuring that residents that live in Santa Ana and that work in that industry are also able to remain in Santa Ana.
So sounds very easy to do. Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions or comments from Commissioner Wu? Commissioner Waffle? Vice Chair Allen? You have a couple of questions regarding the timeline and difference between adoption and approval. You mentioned, you know, so the timeline, there's still yet, when this plan to go to city council for public hearing, the adoption February 1st, then subsequently, there's a public review of housing element refinements January to February 2022, so there will be usually additional updates, I'm assuming, because of HDE comments, and then there's another 60-day HDE review. So will it come back to the planning commission and city council for final adoption after that?
The way that it's proposed at this time is that it not come back to the planning commission. We can certainly bring it back as an information item and a sharing item, but the thought process is that to meet the February 11th timeframe, that we would have it on two separate tracks, if you will, the adoption and then the certification. And we would certainly bring back the, when we start the 30-day review process, we can certainly bring it back to planning commission, but it wouldn't be for action. We're actually encouraging they can take action tonight to move it forward to planning to city council.
And to provide some context, the changes in the CD as have been identified on technical data information and the entire policy changes, anything that was required or significant changes, policy that's been sort of adopted by the city council as recommended, the commission would have to come back for amendment. So the answer is yes. If there are substantial changes that materially affect the document, it would have to come back to the commission. Otherwise, what we're looking at is any technical data requirements, any kind of requirements that are within the policy as proposed would be considered substantial in conformance with what's been adopted and approved.
Thank you. I also have another question regarding the workforce housing number. Maybe you can elaborate on, you know, that seems like, you know, we mentioned that there's opportunity for market rate inclusion there. I was wondering if there, I didn't notice it was kind of a glaring differential there for something that seemed like it should be readily achieved. Is there any policies or any cause for that you see that particular sector just hasn't seen as many units as some of the others?
Justin's going to share his insight with us.
Thank you, Commissioner Morrissey. Our direction from City Council and direction of housing element and from the previous planning period to this new planning period has been to finance the development of affordable housing for extremely low, very low income, large families, right? And that's the housing type that best meets the needs of our community. So we have not made any deliberate or investment attempts to provide affordable housing for moderate income families from 80 to 120% AMI. Now, with that said, we do rely heavily on the private market to meet that target population's housing needs in Santa Ana, considering that we're not making deliberate efforts to meet that housing need. Now, I would caveat all that we have made investments in home ownership opportunities and down payment assistance for moderate income families by allowing moderate income families to qualify for down payment assistance through our city. Recently, City Council adopted an amendment to our down payment assistance program guidelines that allows moderate income families to qualify for up to $80,000 in down payment assistance. That was quite a unique change to allow that much, and builds upon an effort that we started back in 2018 to serve moderate income families. But so primarily they're served through the private market. That doesn't mean that we don't research and learn about solutions out there, including the what is it called? Workforce housing. I forget what it's called. The Workforce Housing Investment Program solution that CSCDA and others have been. Anyways, yeah, we've been, we know there's solutions out there that other cities are researching and adopting for their communities, and we're researching and learning more about those solutions.
Commissioner Clark.
On those lines, I mean, one of the things is that if you look at the recent activity, if you look at the recent activity that's been going on in the newspapers, there's been a number of projects, one in Anaheim, I think one in Costa Mesa, that basically was, city was buying the apartment building and turning it into workforce housing. And I think the question is there anything like that or anything that we can be doing that could in fact be an impact in that area? Because like I said, I mean, it's not something like 10 or 20 units. We're talking more like 300 or 400 units that are being made available under that category.
Thank you, Commissioner McLaughlin. So there's two entities that are providing that program. One is the California Statewide Community Development Authority, CSCDA, and it's called the Middle Income Workforce Housing Program. And the other entity is, I believe it's CalCHA. They're also providing that type of program. And we've learned about those developments, those successes in the city of Anaheim and I believe the city of Costa Mesa. I think
Costa Mesa is right down by the signatures.
Right. So we've heard presentations from both, and one of the core caveats that the media isn't talking about and isn't really featuring is that when those projects are converted into moderate income housing opportunities, it's no longer generates property tax revenue for the city. And so while we see other cities engaging in that solution, which is great, which is what we want as for our community, right? We want regional equitable responsibility for providing affordable housing. Meanwhile, when you look at our community, we're exceeding all of our RENA requirements dramatically. And so for us to take a private market project that is generating property tax revenue for the city and take it offline and convert it into affordable housing, we ask the staff, is that the proper solution for our community? And so we're still evaluating that solution and still researching whether or not it's a good idea for our residents. Anything you wanted to add?
Okay, appreciate that. Thanks for the answer. I mean, I think I did read the estimation. It was, offline property tax but they also talked about the fact that it would not be like a 55-year program either. It would be a program that would be up to the time in which the property was sold.
And so, do we have, I guess I'm considering adding some sort of statement that would, language that would encourage the construction of moderate income housing, which might serve the workforce. Do we have any language similar to that, or already stated in housing element that would change that?
We can do a quick search and look through it. I know in the past we didn't have a program for workforce housing. We actually met with the chamber, and at that time it was a kind of a collaborative effort, but I'm not sure that it's in this draft.
Policy 3.7 is actually titled workforce housing. It's in the draft. It states explore opportunities for creating workforce housing, including for teachers, artists, and other residents working in Santa Ana. So there is a policy in there currently. If the commission feels we could add additional language to supplement that, we can also explore that. But there's a draft policy in there currently.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other discussion from the commissioners? Like
I have a motion.
Call for a motion.
Do we need to close the meeting? Close the public hearing?
No, we closed the public hearing.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to recommend that the city council adopt a resolution approving general plan amendment number 2021-01 for 6 cycle housing element update subject to conforming edit by the executive director of planning and building agency and the city attorney to comply with state housing law and mandate, from which according to that, after a 60-day review prior to the certification, we will get a chance to see what we do.
I'd like to make a friendly amendment.
I don't know what it is.
Just want I don't know if the motion as you read already was, just want to make sure that there's room for staff to make some of the changes that were discussed.
Yeah, it's in here, it's a conforming edits.
Okay.
And it's in the record.
I'll second that motion.
Can we state those edits?
What we heard was the 2 edits include one for the goal that will expire to look at including skilled trade labor as part of the housing up for the ordinance process, is to look at language that would help to as part of that, and then secondly is regarding
The right of first refusal was some broad language.
And then I also made comments on having an objective, exploring, working with child care worker cooperatives. And I believe I had also, and I don't know if this would have to be added as an objective, but working with the organizations that receive ESG funding to work with local Santa Ana organizations and businesses to help them when they're dealing with encampments on underside, so it doesn't really just see record.
Thank you.
The rapid housing is through the county, isn't
It's about, it's part of the ESG program that the city does get funding for.
it? Yeah,
It isn't part of our federal funding.
funding.
Do we have a second for the motion?
I have made a second.
Oh, you made a second, sorry, second by Commissioner Ramos. We have further discussion.
Mr. Chair, it should be, the record should reflect that the maker of the motion was the motion to the changes to the motion.
Yes. Commissioner Wu, are you amenable to the friendly amendment?
Yeah.
I just want one clarification on the first commission, when you said return to the planning commission within the 60 days, if there are substantial changes in terms of the policy
Right.
that you have not seen. Correct.
Thank you.
That's at your discretion as you go through the additional compliance things.
Thank you.
I'd like to call for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Alderani, Commissioner Calderon, Commissioner McLaughlin,
Aye.
Commissioner Ramos,
Aye.
Commissioner Wu, Vice Chair Fong.
Aye.
Chair Morrissey.
Aye.
Motion passes with majority vote with Commissioner Alderani and Commissioner Calderon absent.
We have to go back and do any change.
Say it again?
We don't have to do anything to change up.
No,
No. We excuse that.
he's good.
Thank you. That concludes our business calendar. We'll move on to comments. Are there any staff member comments?
I just want to say in closing the year, I want to wish commission chair a very happy holidays. I know last year during this time we didn't get to do in face-to-face in person, or at least now we get to do it in masks. So wish everyone a happy, safe holidays and best wishes for the coming year.
Thank you, Director. Commissioner comments? Commissioner McLaughlin, do you have any?
I just want to wish everybody a happy holiday and thank everybody for all the hard work that's done this year. Obviously, we've had a lot of major tasks in front of us with regards to the general plan and the housing element. And we've done a great job from a team point of view of getting that done. Also, I heard through the grapevine the other day that Ida is no longer with the planning department. And yes, Ivan, submitted this recommendation. He is right. He'll be missed. He did a great job for the time he's been here. We appreciate his efforts and everything else. Again, happy holiday, and thank you again for everything you guys have done. Melanie, good leadership on the general plan.
Thank you. Mr. Wu?
I want to wish everyone a happy holiday too. Staff, we've got a lot of work to do. I don't envy, but some of this thing. Just so that you know, those homeowners, long-time homeowners of different economic levels are looking at why can't we do this and we don't like that and all those kind of things that you face every time you come out. I think most residents don't understand how this mandate impacts decisions that we are making. They think that some of these decisions are arbitrary by staff, which is not as we know could be different. I just wanted to say that I think as you make your way out there to explain some of these things, how they impact them, they're gonna want some solution on how can we solve this. Because this building is not gonna help us in the neighborhood. It's this problem or that problem. And I don't know if there's a place where the zoning administrator or somewhere where there'll be more time to discuss it and educate residents about that. Also, the second thing is that in our general plan and housing plan, we made a commitment to those that are in need. And I think that's good, and I applaud the city's effort. I think that in the months to come, additional partners like the Anthropology Agency, Community Action, and United Way have some economic stability programs that we need to look at how we can do. I know the last time I did a study of how much money we were spending in Santa Ana, there's somewhere in the $12 million in services and community services, block grants, and other things. So there's a tremendous amount of resources going in Santa Ana to help Santa Ana families. The thing that I'm hoping is that if we look at Maslow hierarchy of need, we're moving people up a step from a crisis to a more striving position. And that's my hope for the new year, is that we can begin making changes.
Thank you, Commissioner Wood. Commissioner Reynolds.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank staff. Thank you, Min, Melanie, Ricardo, Judson, and anybody else that worked on the housing element. I know it's been a long process, and I was happy to see a lot of language that reflects some of the community requests that happened during the summer at those roundtable meetings. So thank you. Also, thank you to members of the public that joined us tonight and provided comment, as well as of you called in. And thank you everyone as well on the dais and in the audience that is wearing masks today. I know that COVID is still around, so I hope that you all will stay safe. And if anybody wants to get tested, Latino Health Access is providing free testing tomorrow from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. The results usually come back the next day. So if anyone wants to just be extra safe before you meet with family and friends, I invite you to go get tested, very low barrier. And just thank you everyone. Have a good night.
Are you giving free booster shots?
I am not, but they are every single Monday as well.
Thank you. Mr. Vice Chair. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I think everyone else said thank you, but I think that Ken said more than enough, so just that for the hard work, and I think the residents for your input. It's better to have a lot of input than no input at all. So thank you very much, and we're going to all of this.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to say happy holidays and Merry Christmas, staff, and thank you all for your hard work throughout the year. The general plan housing update, and I also noticed a lot of language in there, things that I personally care about a lot. Accessibility, saw that infused throughout these documents, and all the environmental issues that we address. Thank you for that. Thank you, commissioners, for participating and patience throughout the year. And wish you all a happy new year. Very much. So I will adjourn the meeting to the next meeting of the Planning Commission, which is regularly scheduled for December 22nd. This 27th is canceled. And the next regular meeting will be held Monday, January 10th at 5:30 p.m. Thank you very much.